Hey, everyone. Well, everyone's comfortable and seated. I can't see you, which is kind of great. It's with great pleasure that I introduce you to Gregory, Parldo, and Eileen Myles. Both of these extraordinary writers contribute to the most exciting and innovative literature today. To celebrate them here at the Wilma on such a glorious stage, newly renovated with terrific acoustics, will no doubt be a lot of fun for all of us. I'd like to thank Rachel. I'd like to thank the University of Montana's Creative Writing and Program and English Department, the Wilma, the Montana Book Festival, and Humanities Montana, along with all of the other generous supporters, book lovers, and donors of the arts gathered here. And what I'll do is I'm going to do a little summary introduction to both writers, and then I will introduce Greg Parldo. And then I'll follow that with an introduction to Eileen Myles. And I want to talk about their work by beginning with an opening sentence in the essay Iceland from Eileen Myles, The Importance of Being Iceland. They write, most likely we travel to exist in an analog to our life's dilemmas. It's like a spaceship. The work for the traveler is making the effort to understand that the place you are moving through is real, and the solution to your increasingly absent problems is forgetting. To see them in a burst as you are vanishing into the world. Travel is not transcendence, it's immanence. It's trying to be here. For Myles and Parldo, I could do a substitution and say that the work in their poems is making the effort to understand that the place you are moving through is real, and the solution in their poems, and to see what in the poem bursts in that immanence, in their trying to be here, which they are, which is why these two poets and their poems allow us in, and into the most terrific spaceship, if you will, of powerful work. Poets who, in their style, poetic will, and traditions, exemplify the intellectual, communal, and political selves, and exude a generative structure to the art of storytelling. Both Myles and Parldo construct a plurality of poetic forms to hold the intricacy of account, of the marginal, of class consciousness, of queerness, of philosophy, of gender, of love and desire. Gregory Parldo's recent collection, Digest, functions like a digest in how it compiles fact, exploring the poet's corrective lenses and creative reading practices. In the poem Marginalia, we start with an epigram from Robert Hayden, quote, "Sing the Union, 'cause sing us, the poor, the marginal," and end the poem with an address to another poet and to the poet speaking to himself, as he did in the opening poem, as he puts, "You are home now, outsider, for what that's worth." The poem continues in a sequence where Parldo explores the poetics of the document by looking at Gouverneur Morris's preamble of the Constitution and what it means to gerrymander the metaphor. For Parldo, too, there is a storytelling of the I speaking to the world about the world, and in there we have Led Zeppelin, Gail Jones, Prince, Heraclitus, and James Dean, among many other luminaries who have cameos. This is a digest of inquiry and reading practices, and indeed, it's our own analog of dynamic poetic synthesis. Yesterday, a colleague of mine, I don't know if Marianne's here, from Visual Arts, asked Greg if the poems had velocity, and I nodded in agreement. Yes, they do. They have so much velocity. Gregory Parldo's collection Digest, Four-Way Books, won the 2015 Pulitzer Prize for Poetry. Digest was also shortlisted for the 2015 NAACP Image Award and was a finalist for the Hurston Wright Legacy Award. His other honors include fellowships from the National Endowment for the Arts and the New York Foundation for the Arts. His first collection, Totem, was selected by Brenda Hillman for the APR Honickman Prize in 2007. He's also the author of Air Traffic, a memoir and essays forthcoming from Knopf. Parldo joins the faculty of the MFA program in creative writing at Rutgers University Camden in the fall of 2016, and he lives with his family in Brooklyn. Please welcome Gregory Parldo.
Sorry, I didn't mean to make you keep clapping that long. So, yeah, it is great. I can barely see you. That is comforting. This almost fulfills a dream of mine. This curtain reminds me of childhood dreams of pulling rabbits out of a hat. Flowers out of a wand. Double Dutch. The girls turning double Dutch bob and weave like boxers, pulling punches, shadowing each other, sparring across the slack cord, casting parabolas in the air. They whip quick as an infant's pulse, and the jumper, before she enters the winking, nods in time as if she has a notion to share, waiting her chance to speak. But she's anticipating the upbeat, like a band leader counting off the tune they are about to swing into. The jumper stair steps into midair as if she's jumping rope in low gravity, training for a lunar mission. Airborne a moment long enough to fit a second thought in, she looks caught in the mouth bones of a fish as she flutter floats into motion like a figure in a stack of time-lapse photos thumbed alive. Once inside, the bells tied to her shoestrings roused the gods who've lain in the dust since the Dutch acquired Manhattan. How she dances patterns like a dust-heavy bee, retracing its travels in scale before the hive. How the whole stunning contraption of girl and rope slaps and scoops like a paddle boat. Her misted skin arranges the light with each adjustment and flex, now heather-hued, now sheen, light listing on the fulcrum of a wrist, and the bare, jutted joints of elbow and knee, and the faceted surfaces of muscle, surfaces fracturing and reforming like a sun-tickled sleeve of running water. She makes jewelry of herself and garlands the ground with shadows. So I have had the great pleasure of hanging out in Missoula for a couple of days, and I got to speak to some students at Big Sky High School and Sentinel High School. And they wore me out with questions. So I had this entirely new perspective on my poems. Written by himself. I was born in minutes in a roadside kitchen, a skillet whispering my name. I was born to rainwater and lie. I was born across the river, where I was borrowed with clothespins, a harrow tooth, broadsides sewn in my shoes. I returned, though it please you, through no fault of my own, pockets filled with coffee grounds and eggshells. I was born still and superstitious. I bore an unexpected burden. I gave birth, I gave blessing, I gave rise to suspicion. I was born abandoned outdoors in the heat-shaped air drifting like spirits and old windows. I was born a fraction and a cipher and a ledger entry. I was an index of first lines when I was born. I was born waist deep, stubborn in the water, crying, ain't I a woman and a brother? I was born to this hall of mirrors, this horror story. I was born with a prologue of references, pursued by mosquitoes and thieves. I was born passing off the problem of the 20th century. I was born. I read minds before I could read fishes and loaves. I walked a piece of the way alone before I was born. Does everybody else hear that music? Good. It's getting louder, isn't it? Fucking open the door. What? Let's go all the way. Let's just do it. Okay. So on my mother's side, I have aunts, and on my father's side, I have an aunt. And you understand the difference, yeah. And one day I got this email or this text, a photo of this guy in this really tacky suit, I mean, kind of shiny suit, hat, feather, whole nine. And I'm thinking, what is this? Who is sending me this? And I figured out it's from my aunt. I'm like, why is she sending this to me? And I figured out she was sending it to my dad. Why the hell is she sending it to my dad? And so it got me thinking about all the subtle ways that certainly siblings, but just family members in general have of showing aggression toward one another, you know, the coded insults that fly under the radar for anybody outside the group. And so this is kind of exploring that idea. Attachment Atlantic City Pimp. Left of the @ sign, the email address was ethnically gendered with the nonce noun sista, which I have to confess I scoffed at, thinking it was from some self-discovering student of mine, before realizing it was my aunt who sent the JPEG from her cell phone. My aunt, who doesn't mind a bit of shell if it means getting all the crab meat, who is known to only leave behind enough of a tip to shame the waitstaff for their inattention. The subject line read, AC Pimp, as if her painted nails and belly laugh made her expert in the fauna of pimps, a soul-stirred savant of things cold-blooded. As if she could divine an ivory-handled derringer holstered at his breast, icing the steel heart cognate to the gun, that twin ventriloquist of tinder and sulfur dust, that rhythmic and delicate organ pumping like a fist that has a knack for snake eyes and the superfluity of bruises that follow every spaghetti-strapped back talker's doubt. She must have thought she'd reached her brother, my father, who harbors like a gold molar a taste for robin egg and mauve pocket squares, a flourish of trim, a hand stitch, lapels check-striped and foreshortened like Tyrannosaurus arms, and ostrich print Stacey Adams to match. The modest feathered derby contrasting all those boas festooning street lamps and mailboxes. But my aunt is no mere expert. AC may have been a random tag, but that word, pimp, bore the import of all us do-wrong men. She was, in effect, signifying the kind of humor that waters the eye, the double talk, the shadow dialect. Like her spite-tinged smile at a bridal shower, her patina of derision enlivened the photo. My aunt, who refuses to settle for a man less Christian than she is, finds everywhere despicable men. Hence the dozens via email, the critique like a razor inside a roll of 20s, the currency of our vengeance economy. Perhaps there was an untroubled sea just beyond the garish casinos behind him, a stilt walker or a mime just outside the frame, a carnival and boardwalk where the horizon would be, maybe a tour bus full of people waving. But out of all the images that might speak to something inside her, this was the one she found worth saving. So I I was working on a PhD, on again, off again, a very torrid and painful affair. And one of the things that had long annoyed me was this practice that we poets have of putting epigraphs on poems that are wildly out of scale to the poem. It's got nothing to do with the poem, but it's Wallace Stevens. So of course this poem is powerful. So I decided, as I was reading, doing a lot of just reading wide and far, I would come across these lines that I thought would make really obnoxious epigraphs. And so I started collecting them. But then I didn't have poems to put them on. So I decided to write poems in response to the epigraphs. So that's what these are. Heraclitus. We cannot know the water, but only its perpetual movement. Overheating cannot be blamed on a faulty idiot light. The car in crisis, beached on the roadside and pouring steam from its blowhole as you watch the rain melt the windshield. The perfect screen for projecting a fantasy dissolve that begins with your jalopy dropped from a barge to be eaten by the reef like a dive site. An hour earlier, this bell jar hummed and clunkered as it sluiced through vacuum tubes lining the riverbed from Manhattan to Hoboken, the interstate peace pipes which lead to the suburban drive-through bank window where you hand deliver your savings to creditors. You think of self-sabotage, dirigibles bursting the sky in newsreels over Lakehurst, flaming like immolating monks. Our machines merely echo our body's disposition. Your desire for the tellers to leave their tanks and swim to your rescue, pretty as new money floating ghostly outside the car window as the last pockets of air pinch off and the water gently closes over your head. St. Augustine. If no one asks me, I know what it is. If I wish to explain it to him who asks me, I do not know. Prince calls it little because he imagines a woman's body waist up, the rest corvette, which is French for a sort of girly warship, a chimerical twist on the Freudian cockpit. Who wouldn't want a belly button for a windshield? All us baby ball turret gunners would submit to mother love as long as we were allowed the illusion that we commanded the vessel. This may be why we give them names like Bessie and Lila Mae, but our cars are more prosthesis than portmanteau. We say horses that muscle and gun, but idle next to one and hear its sputtering Promethean delirium like a hound's twitching dream of dogfights in biplanes that strafe the velvet sky with the leathery helmets of their little red barons. We would have swooped the oil fields where pilot lights burned like Zippos at a rock concert to safeguard our memories of weekends washing father's vet, fearing both its pliant fire and our need to ride in pursuit of some unconscious joy, certain only that we'd know it if it ever could be found. I've been really interested in forms in this book, throughout the book. And so I have a couple of poems that are in the form of college course descriptions. You write them enough, you read them enough, and you begin to see that all the conventions, and they all tend to sound very similar. But another form that I came across was the rare book description. And so I wanted to figure out the conventions for the rare book. I realized it would have to be something kind of certainly out of date, a little obsolete, but have enough sentimental value that you'd want to keep it around. It made me think of my parents. 8:37, Wilson, Shirley Ann Mfumi, Black Pampers, Raising Consciousness in the Post-Nationalist Home. Black Talk Press, Lawnside, New Jersey, 1976. 442 pages, illustrator unknown, 10.5 by 11 7/8 inches. Want tips for nursery decor? Masks and hieroglyphics. Aquaba dolls. Send Raggedy Ann to the trash heap. This tome is a how-to for upwardly mobile Black parents beset with the guilt of assimilation. Revealed here are the safety pinnings of the nascent Black middle class, their leafy, split-level cribs, and infants with Sherman Hemsley hairlines. Of interest are bedtime polemics on the racist derivations of the wheels on the bus. Chapter headings address important questions of the day. How and how soon should you intervene if you suspect your child lacks rhythm? At what age should you begin initiating your little one to the historical memory of slavery? And how ethical is the two-cake solution? One party for classmates, and a second one so you can secretly invite the cousins. Indispensable to collectors for whom Aesop's African origin is no matter of debate will be the gloss and annotation comprising the bulk of the text of the lyrics to Stevie Wonder's Black Man. According to the jacket copy, one of the alternate titles considered was What to Expect When You're No Longer Expecting Revolution. Usual occasional scattered light foxing to interiors, contemporary tree calf exceptional, about fine condition, $75. I finally friended my brother. That's it, that's the whole poem. I finally friended my brother. It may be we will never speak again. Why speak when we have this crystal ball through which to judge one another's lives? I imagine this is what the afterlife will be like. I'm ghost, we say, instead of goodbye. The Fulton Street Food Town is playing Motown, and I'm surprised at how quickly my daughter picks up the tune. And soon the two of us, plowing rows of goods steeped in fructose under light thick as corn oil, are singing, "Baby, I Need Your Lovin'," unconscious of the lyrics' foreboding. My happy child riding high in the shopping cart as if she's cruising the polished aisles on a tractor laden with imperishable foodstuffs. Her cornball father enthusiastically prompting with spins and flourishes and the double barrel fingers of the gunslinger's pose. But we hear it as we round the rice and Goya aisle, that other music, the familiar exchange of anger, the war drums of parent and child. The boy wants what? To be carried? To eat the snacks right from his mother's basket? What does it matter? He's making a scene. With no self-interest beyond the pleasure of replacing wonder with wonder, my daughter asks me to name the boy's offense. I offer to buy her ice cream. How can I admit recognizing the portrait of fear the mother's face performs? The inherited terror of nonconformity, frosted with the fear of being thought disrespected by or lacking the will to discipline one's child. The boy's cries rising like hosannas as the mother's purse falls from her shoulder, her missed step from the ledge of one of her stilted heels, passion loosed with each displaced hairpin, his little jacket bunched at the collar where she has worked the marionette. Later, when I'm placing groceries on the conveyor belt and it is clear I have forgotten the ice cream, my daughter tries her hand at this new algorithm of love, each word punctuated by her little fist. "Boy," she commands, "didn't I tell you?" angels. At 13, I asked my father for a tattoo. I might as well have asked for a bar mitzvah. He said I had no right to alter the body he gave me. Aping what little of Karl Marx I had learned from the sisters down the street who wore torn black stockings with Doc Martens, I said I was a man because I could claim my body and the value of its labor. You can see how this is going to go. This meant I could adorn it or dispose of it as I chose. Tattoos, my father said, are like children. Have one, you'll want another. I knew there was a connection between the decorated body and reproduction. This was why I wanted a tattoo. Yet I reasoned, not in so many words. His analogy only held in the case of possession. In other words, I possess my body, but I cannot possess my children. His laughter was my first lesson in the human Ponzi scheme of paternalism, the self-electing indenture to the promise of material inheritance, men claiming a hollow authority because simply their fathers had claimed a hollow authority. Knowing I had little idea as to what my proposed tattoo might resemble, my father sent me to my room to sketch it using the pastels he had given me for Christmas. Based on his critique, he said he would consider my request. But he'd already taken the shine from my swagger. How can I beautify what I do not possess and call it anything but graffiti? Now, Chris Rock says my first job is to keep my daughter off the pole. Whether or not I agree with him, I get his point. As a father myself, I now see every mutinous claim of independence as the first steps toward my sweet peas falling in with a bad crowd. Richard Pryor says we're bound to fuck up our kids one way or another. My father would split the difference. I made you, he'd say. I can unmake you and make another one just like you. And I'll wrap up with wishing well. Outside the Met, a man walks up, son tweaking the brim sticker on his baseball cap, and he says, "Pardon me, old school," he says. "You know, is this a wishing well?" "Yes, son," I say sideways over my shrug. "Throw your bread on the water." I tighten my chest, wheezy as Rockaway beach sand, with a pull of faux smoke from my e-cig to cozy the truculence I hotbox alone, and I am at the museum because it is not a bar. Because he appears not to have changed them in days. I eye the heel-chewed hems of his pants and think probably he will ask me for 50 cents any minute now. Wait for it. A smoke or something. Central Park displays the frisking transparency of autumn. Tracing paper sky, leaves like eraser crumbs gum the pavement. As if deciphering celestial script, I squint and purse off toward the roof line of the museum, aloof as he fists 2 pennies from his pockets, mumbling and then aloud. "My man," he says, "hey, my man, I'm gonna make a wish for you too." I'm laughing now. "So what, you want me to sign a waiver?" He laughs along. "Ain't say all that," he says, "but you do have to hold my hand. And close your eyes." I make a starless night of my face before he asks, "Are you ready?" "Yeah, dog, I'm ready." "Sure?" "Sure, let's do this." His rough hand in mine inflates like a blood pressure cuff. Then I squeeze back as if we are about to step together from the sill of all resentment and timeless toward the dream source of unneeding. The two of us hurtle, sharing the cosmic breast of plenitude when I hear the coins blink against the surface and I cough up daylight like I've just been dragged ashore. "See now? You'll never walk alone," he jokes. and is about to hand me back to the day he found me in like I was a rubber duck. And he says, "You got to let go." But I feel bottomless, and I know he means well, though I don't believe. And I feel myself shaking my head no, when he means let go his hand. Thank you.
I was having to tell Gregory that that band is a live band outside. So I apologize for the distraction, but thank you so much for being patient with that. Eileen Myles engages prose and poetry richly and also with velocity. In the poem, The Poet, with, quote, "I made myself into a poet because it was the first thing I really loved. It was an act of will." In theorist Lauren Berlant's book, Love, Desire, Berlant writes about love versus desire, quote, "By contrast, love is the embracing dream in which desire is reciprocated. Rather than being isolating, love provides an image of the expanded self." Myles' poems are these expansions of what there is to love in the world, along with poems exploring desire, too. Though I won't go further into Berlant's theories of desire, I will say that Myles' poems get us thinking about the simultaneous space of what language produces about love and desire. And our intellectual self is a desirous self producing the expansion of the metaphor and of the pronoun, worlds of objects and humans and the natural world communing in the poem's turns as it unfolds on the page, as does her prose. I must add that Myles' writing is full of humor, and that charm is an irresistible feature of listening and experiencing Myles read, which is a gift to us tonight. Eileen Myles is the author of 19 books, including I Must Be Living Twice, new and selected poems, and a reissue of Chelsea Girls, both out in fall 2015 from Echo HarperCollins. They are the recipient of a Guggenheim Fellowship in Nonfiction, an Andy Warhol Creative Capital Arts Writers Grant, a Lambda Book Award, the Shelley Prize from the Poetry Society of America, as well as being named to the Slate Whiting Second Novel List. Currently, they teach at NYU and Naropa University and live in Marfa, Texas, and New York. We're also lucky to have they as our Hugo Writer in 2010. Please welcome Eileen Myles.
Woo! You guys, that is the strangest entrance. I was like, the only thing that was weirder was like before Williamsburg was Williamsburg. I remember reading in Williamsburg, and I read at some little theater where I guess it would come up. It was sort of like, I guess when it was over, the curtain would come up and cover you from the bottom up. It was so strange. I was just, anyway. So I'm going to read poems, and I think when I told Pragita I was reading poems, I think maybe she thought I was going to read prose too, but I think it's some prose in my poems and some poetry in my prose, so what's the diff? And I'm going to read from, it's so cool. So my selected just came out in a paperback, which, I mean, like, I think it's, you know, like, I find the experience of having a book coming out in a hardcover and then coming out in a paperback a year later such a whole new way of looking at publishing a book. I recommend it to you. I was like, and shit, and there was a little playlist in here and it seems gone. That's... Yeah, is there, why not? My backpack's in there. Did they stop playing music? Am I that, like, lucky person? That's incredible. Thank you so much, Sherman. Okay, so I'm going to read some older poems and then some new stuff. And Greg, that was amazing. Those were beautiful poems. And I feel... And I think I sort of agree. I think we're both a little placey in our work. I mean, not all poets are placey. This is called What Tree Am I Waiting? And I'm going to try not to do... You know the thing when you talk between the poems? I'm going to try not to do that. Because, you know, you sort of say the same things all the time because it seems like the right thing that people should know. And maybe it's okay not to know. That weirdly, I want to read my blurbs. What tree am I waiting? That whole part of the world where I won't go anymore. Oh, now the music's back. I can hear it now. That whole part of the world where I won't go anymore. That whole separation that I won't feel high in this house, in this hemisphere, in this artificial light that is artificial in the earliest morning, dark, and pages and pens, and an unfamiliar bed in the foot curl, furniture, each rumble when morning comes, and it's still morning, and it's still night. I married a dead girl. We were born in her bloom. Remember that fat bumblebee landed on a lamp? I opened the doors and I forgot, and the house got colder and colder. Where is this house? The seam between boards merely gains my attention. It's dark and thin. I monitor each situation, my bladder growing full. Climb down, climb up. What tree am I waiting? My whole life and weather, waiting for my raft. I'll fly to another island. I'll take a train. Already I know it will hurt. This is the hurt country. I came here to hold the hurt like a bird, like a tree. Traffic has rings. We watch it whirl around, damaging our night. Great continents hold the feelings and the ages. What is mine, going blind. Great masses of them not going home. The country drew a line because of memory. One said, I feel my heart race ahead. In eternity there is this ache, there is this wakefulness. This one's called That Rat's Death. I'm dying to tell you a story, but I'm not going to do it. It just means there's some prose in my poetry. I'm just not doing it tonight. I'm proud that you'll feel the story. I'm proud that I fed my avocado to the mice this week. To see that scattered dust around the hole, I felt disappointed the apple had been spared, the throbbing soup home. He said it's a storm. It's a storm, I thought. Am I allowed to ask entire questions, to take this space alone? You bobbing, you painted in my dog's face so carefully. Some kind of violence stretches the thought so long and allows the horns of words to touch each other. I think of him taking that much space. You don't know about this. Dish towel, for that matter. Who was I in another time giving the tale so much, puzzled that these spices went someplace else? They did today in a sandwich. The empty hall into which I am reading, the empty country, an entire country, I wanted all of them. How I would like just one to pick things up in its cities and its rain, its coast, the outer coat. 78 RPM, silly newspapers turning, cat on a porch. And other countries nearby and home, ready for me when I have something to say or show, if ever. My empty mistakes, my empty vase, my empty powers of horror, my empty sex. Oh, bring the snow. That rat's death killed me because I would see it for days over and over, and it hardly could be the same rat whose insides whisked the street. We don't think that war is such an incredible mess, but it was just yesterday in an ancient poems, years ago, in the past. Dying, the balloon just bursts. It cannot bring you back again. The huge, cool breath, the lake doesn't want you anymore, or her arms, her sweet muff or breasts, the storm, the past. But no, I won't leave my cheese out for them anymore, and I must be the last person in the world in New York to read him who told us about mice. That sing and fill empty auditoriums like us in our singing hearts, our formula for bringing it out. Pulling the receptacle apart, watch the tiny ship floating on it, smithereens. I duck the tail, edging over, taking a little bit more. The price of wider concepts is not choosing your drops, flicking me off, reminding me of you, everyone yell at once. 2 rabbit legs jutting out. I keep my childhood around almost more than everyone, and a mouse can share my house, wet tootsie. It's kind of great, the whole thing is relative. Since I admired his mountains, I imagine I was in his landscapes. But opening packages is occurring all over the place. That's a strong image, and I feel like the smallness is directly rooted. Forgetting to use the new calendar I planned. These marks, I imagined, are the sources. All the milk flooding wildly over the rolling hills and out of the sun's comical eyes. Not tears, but creamy drops of mammalian weather. I'm given real information, and the most difficult part is blindly creating the space where the parts I can't see or even hear spread out, like the night in Paris when I walked to the movies. Onto my desk and the surrounding hills, into the bleachers where everyone is pounding themselves bloody in salute to the hunt. All I ever wanted was dinner, or at least his love, the delight I see in him is equally empty for anyone, and probably that's his stealth, inner lake. There's a car, a maroon, a colorless oval. I can imagine the seats and the feeling of hearing a song as we're weaving over hills. There's no break. Everybody I ever saw in my seacoast community is already facing the problems, huge and gloomy, I grant you, and the night spills on my keys, which are splayed over the counter, and outside it's light, and they are flipping their cards, every one of them. Texas. It's weird. I have a place in Texas now, so I live in Texas and New York, and then suddenly it's like this is a new story. This is not an old one. I realized that there's just all these Texas things in my life sort of leading up. It doesn't, like you do something that seems accidental, and then later on you realize that everything was leading up to this place where you would live in Texas. Which is my one advice about getting a Guggenheim grant, which is that what they really want you to do is act as if your whole, there's that part where it's the career narrative, and what they really want is you to act like your whole entire career was adding up to this body of work which they must fund, And basically that's the form of the petition, like they have to feel like you are utterly forcing their hand. I needed to share that tonight. I'm nearly crying for it, looking at the large colored map on his wall. Poor Texas, looking big as life and dying to secede. Mama, did Annie Oakley ever cry? Or Mother, is it true she couldn't cry and that's why she could shoot so well? Oh, Mama, I just want to cry sitting here looking at Texas across the face of the map, so big and so lonely. I just want to get a BB gun and shoot that fucking state to bits. Joan. Today, May 30th, Joan of Arc was burned. She was 19, and when she died, a man saw white doves fly from her mouth. Well, Joan was born in 1412 between Lorraine and Champagne. Joan was raised on legends. Merlin said France would be lost by a woman and saved by a virgin. Joan was not an adventurous girl, not a tomboy, but very dreamy, good, stay at home, the baby of the family. Joan never got her period. She heard these voices in the bells. She saw angels in colored glass. She believed the sun moved around the earth because that's what she saw. She believed God wanted Charles VII to be king of France because that's what Michael, Catherine, and Margaret told her when she listened to the bells. Her father said he'd drown her if she didn't stop this nonsense. She was 19 years old when they burned her body in the middle of town while she was still alive. A white dove came out of her mouth as she died. 548 years ago today, a dove leaped right out of her mouth. Lorna and Vicky. It's sort of like reading in a pizza shop. It was just like, done that at least once. I was like, inside the White House lives the President of the United States, and the First Lady lives with him. It makes me think about history. Amazing that anyone could or would want to live in there, especially to live with a guy who lives in there. To live with some children, too. Lesbian mums are shaking in the breeze that, to really tell the truth, this Smith Corona is shaking the table, is shaking the gray stone mug that holds the lavender mums so they shake. I was riding down Fifth Avenue yesterday and the jostling vehicle started getting me off, and I started pressing my finger against the seam of my jeans between my legs. It got even better, but then I thought, oh, Eileen, let nature take its course. I've had orgasms sitting at the back of the bus on the far left, right over the motor. And pedaling up a hill on a hot summer day, I was nearly knocked off my bicycle by one. But I was young and I thought it was a religious experience. Masturbation will always be my favorite form of sex, though if I was a tree, I'd just stand there in the breeze. My mother used to spend a lot of her summer evenings trying to cajole me into doing the dishes. Eventually, she'd do this thing called getting them started or letting them soak. I couldn't stand it. Same way I can't stand this Smith Corona growling or humming while I'm looking for a word. I like to do my waiting in silence. I don't mind that pup yapping out my window. She's not even mindful of my mums or my mother or you napping on the couch or soaking dishes irritated my abandon. Despite the fact I'm putting it off, something's getting done. Each moment the job gets a little easier, and by the time I slide my hands into the water and pull out a plate, your idea was a good one, Mom. Several hours of soaking have certainly loosened up the food particles clinging to this evening's dishes. I'm sure these will be done in a jiff, thanks to you. Or water. But that's the point. Sun is much the same. If you put a couple of tea bags in a quart jar of water and set the whole mess on your fire escape, you wind up with something called sun tea. Just think about it. Add some lemons. It makes me wonder what wind can do when you're not even looking. Apparently it jostles the leaves and petals too. It's nature's favorite form of sex, I bet. Turning rain into a storm, knocking the angles of raindrops around like pool balls. Silently, though, not the storm, but the movement. Movement is pretty quiet as long as it's not work. I guess it was Thursday morning during a tropical storm called David that I put on this top-type poncho and went up on the roof to see a lunar eclipse. Naturally, the storm had masked the event. The sun was a smudged peach, but loaded somehow. It actually felt magnetic. The moon doing this thing you couldn't see. While I was standing on my roof inside Magic, a very mad and pleased, juridical woman, I wanted to pray to somebody or something, wind or rain or downstairs in the warmth when I took my clothes off and got back in bed and fell asleep. I think I'm going to read one more teeny old one, and then I'm going to cut to some new ones. I'm sort of enjoying this non-editorial approach to reading. Because when you talk a lot, you get to this point, you think, well, I should just say fuck the poems and just keep talking, right? And then it would be stand-up, right? I don't think I can afford the time to not sit right down and write a poem about the heavy-lidded white rose I hold in my hand. I think of snow. A winter night in Boston, drunken waitress stumble on a bus that careens through Somerville, the end of the line, where I was born, an old man shaking me. He could have been my dad. You need a ride? Wait, he said, this flower is so heavy in my hand. He drove me home in his old blue Dodge, a thermos next to me, cigarette packs on the dash, so quiet like Boston is quiet, Boston in the snow. It's New York, plates are clattering on St. Mark's Place. Should I call you? Can I go home now and work with this undelivered message in my fingertips? It's summer. I love you. I'm surrounded by snow. This is called bad. All languages are foreign. Ask a dog. My dog never knows what I mean. She's barking and barking. I don't understand it. Her fear is endless, the pink of her mouth so deep. Take zebras alive with those stripes, but they don't know they are stripes. A whale breaches. The little dog threw herself in the gutter full of dirty water. The owner got upset. She was playing with my dog, and they were just so brave till then. What changed? Who could I ask? Speech habituates us to not understanding. Cat looks alarmed, and there's never just one cat. Okay, this is to a computer. You. After all these years, you should know my font. You should know the numbers go in the middle. What I say? There's so many of you. Why don't you talk each time I have to click and press? What's the use of being famous? And this is weirdly up the same line. There's a little thing. This is called Too Much Blue. I'm a little embarrassed, and I don't want to see how many people like that thought. I didn't read the poem, How It Felt to Be Inside Being Here, without talking to people who aren't. It was place without place from the inside. On the other hand, I thought about going to Malden, where my grandmother's buried. This machine is making sure I don't get used to it, and I'm not. I can't recall what I was writing that on, but this is called Transparent. The photo in the hotel room looks crucifixy, and that makes me sad. Personal note from the cleaning lady sounded intimate with God. I've got his ear. I'm sick of God being female, but that's off topic. Being blinding light and dull curtains, a brown-themed room, and a brown dildo on the counter in my Instagram feed. The inside of the body is brown, but the head of the cross is pushing off into the waters of some unknown sea. I don't want this to exactly come to something. I made a mistake in mentioning sad, which is like a war. Who won? Like a figure reluctant to tell a story. Anti-narrative, then what? A stylish hotel distorts everything. Red palm trees. I'm thinking of you. I know. But what are you thinking? I'm thinking about a TV show about poetry, because these are tiny messages, like it or not. I could start off every show like Louis, and then you'd get into the nitty-gritty of my life, which is all there is. That's the first poet story. Okay. Western poem. It's actually more fun to read new poems. I don't know what I was doing for the last 15 minutes. Purple clouds, my doubts. Iridescent cream, my loss. Purple mountains, my friends. Buzzards circling overhead, my hopes. Birds singing, jagged singing, my indecision. Wrecked skinny tree, my past. Photographs I send home, my indiscretion. Amber streetlight, my reading. My appetite. Red striped sky, my confusion. Bright yellow, gray sky, my ardor. Car lights, my commotion. Telephone pole, my wishes. Stop sign, my fear. Family dollar. Courthouse, my opinion. Black cloud, white sky, hesitation. Black cloud, white sky, bliss. Blinking signals, my intentions. Black mountains, too many suggestions. Skipping white lines, my attention. A young cowboy, first saw the lights. The horns on your van, my defensiveness. That old train, my dreams. That old train. I can feel that what you're feeling is awe. Okay. This is called Sweetheart, which is 2 words. You think that was funny? It was like, that's the pain of time. That's what a poet suffers. That's great. The great thing that Jimmy Schuyler said, which is the writing the poem part is the easy part. It's all the rest of the time it's a problem with being a poet. Fresca's got a new look, but I'm not drinking that. My Coke struck the ice and the ice cube cracked. I'm sitting by the little Buddha who is sitting in my yard. I imagine you walking in, gasping at the same couch, the same bed. It's almost the same town, but this is what I meant. And there's so much pleasure, difference, and this, that. I meant to be here. One sleeps on what they mean and arises on the decided side, and that's the hope. An entire room is opened by particular feelings that say you're on the edge of the space, and then you wait to watch it grow. Grow like a love or a feeling of distrust or a body grateful for sun and breeze and the rising and falling of my dog's chest. No, gut. The little Buddhas smiling southeast, I figured that out. Their genitals are unknown. In fact, they're everything smiling, walked on by ants, planted in the dirt but not dead, activated by my gaze. Their smiling makes me glad. God turns Buddha's way. I go forward with confidence. I may turn nothing up but this gentle scratching in my yard before making a call, opening the self somehow so it's possible to have a friend to call, not only from need but interest in their life, the body I'm pouring into, joyous to be connected to someone while covered by ants, surrounded by breeze, actually touched by birds. Their sound, then landing. There is nothing romantic in their absence. The bird is all touch, no matter how distant their flight. The sky is open. My gaze is wide. It matters how they dive and hover. The silly cluck, the ninny, constant, the hoot makes the gray sky blue, trees brown, green slanting trees. The woman dying in her face thought, am I recording? But it was the young man counting everything. Cora Crete, whose art I liked so much last weekend in Sydney, performed Bird in the dying sky, in the dying woman's sky. So his quote was reverential, that she could be copying anything by dying was more about him. A mustache on the sound that life's made of. I think you don't miss me enough, or you regard me as seasons that simply come, and it's true, I'm everything. I used to love so much to show you my poems, but everything's not enough. You have to go out and shake everything's hand, and the tremendous feeling of everything is not shook enough. I'm sick of being God for you. I'm not the fresca or the Buddha or the bird. I'm the ice that cracks. I'm really feeling it now. The amazing difference of contact, everything's gasp. It begins so slow, hours of freezing, waiting, a life, and the draining of it by waiting too long, riding around in a car. I'm not any Coke, I'm every Coke. And a bird likes the sound of that. To be so close, the earth parts for its own arrival. The time of day is enchanted by my jeans on the line. I'm enchanted by everything too. How could I be it and feel it? Drawing sunline sticks. If I say two again, and I'm creating a pattern, someone who doesn't love me will say, you say two too much. I suppose going blind is momentarily seeing colors in everything and remembering them for the rest of your life. I'm afraid to tell you I'm going blind. What I'm saying is I'm retiring from God. I will feel my genius quietly, the furrows of a dead tree accepting my love. You start like a car and pepper in a number of growls. That's dog. You roll in your bird, and Buddha's difficult now, more of an aside. That something so different as the sun could turn, I think, and we're turning on our dirty little urn. There's a movie about everything, my getting this part of that, endlessly obliged to be wise. Upstairs, 16 little eggs turn in another galaxy, someone else's sandwich. Today, I was so busy, I didn't even see lunch. I had it, but I didn't see it at all. The distant eggs are turning for someone else. I poured Fresca into my glass, and then I poured my vodka, and then I got drunk. Darker day now, when my throat fills and Buddha's awake. A bee wants to sting me, and in that moment, I would notice everything. Why do you think I'm sweet? Why must I die? Well, you had to applaud for that one. What the fuck? Okay, I'm going to read one more poem, because that's such an obvious poem to end on. And yet, I do have this other one I'm dying to hear. So, and I think I'm in what I consider a sensitive time realm. Actually, I'm going to read a very weird one, and then I'm going to read one more, and that's it. And this is called Chickens in the Yard. Biography of nothing. Giant clouds. His smile curated desert rat, or true. I can't exist without my harmonica. To slide under, table shade, keys, always moving. This is less. Prancing my tune, laundry day, insole unfortunately, got dried. Any kind of poverty is mostly thought, except starvation, except homeless, unloved, possibly killed. Less is an idea until it's true. Bark. This is kind of great, right? And now the final poem, which is called Yellow House. Just realized I have a strong dark stripe. Save it. I think I'll make a painting of your house. Is that what she thought? And along rolled my contempt. I think I'll run on the beach with my dog and not walk her in the forest, which she loves. She fought with a poodle. I don't think she started it, I said. I didn't see it, said Betsy. I throw my brown leg on the table and finish the book, having eaten and feel softened by it. Planning to stay upright today, I wrote in my book, this world in which we can all see public moving portraits of ourselves, especially me. You had such a year, said Betsy. And then you sit in your own body in the morning deciding how to treat your dog. I'm shocked at how I treated my girlfriend. I'll probably write a book about that. Incrementally, we let little things out on the new media, but not today. I'm stopping that. I send out texts. I try to have a friend. I intend to share with a gallery in LA a page of my diary for them to make a pile and share. Is that too weird? I'm thinking Jonathan has Claire and Claire gardens, and she gave me a couple of tomatoes yesterday. They were red, sitting on the stairs, and I had thought she didn't like me. And yesterday I thought nobody did. It was good around lunch, but I went home and ended that. He hates the country, but I love when I shut up. The birds cheep, and the trees wave their hands. What is this? What do we call it? In his book, I would make a little line like this to show where I stopped. My poem ends in a place right here because I need you. Do you believe this? Thank you.
Thank you to two terrific poets, Gregory and Eileen. And I think they'll be... I think that I'm not sure where they're signing, but they will be signing books and are happy to answer any questions at the signing table. I'm not sure. I think it's just out there. But thank you so much for attending.